it's a brave and martial sound, the sound of the bagpipes. But Scotsmen understand the arts of peace no less. The lowland soil is rich and fertile. There is beauty in the Lothian countryside that is no mere rugged grandeur. You wouldn't expect to be long in this part of Scotland without visiting the birthplace of Robert Burns. Dear Robbie, born on the banks of the Doon, the poorest of the poor, yet he had such rich gifts. Ploughman, poet, lover, tippler, he worked here at Ellisland Farm. And here he met Jean Armour. This is where he walked with his bonny Jean. This is the old church at Alloway, to remind you of the Epistle to Davy, and Death and Dr. Hornbrook. This is the Brig o' Doon, over which he passed so many times. This is the beautiful Burns Monument at Alloway. And this is the old bridge at Ayr. From Ellisland, Burns came to Ayr, and Ayr has fittingly remembered the immortality of his lilting verse. Burns died on the 21st of July, 1796. A grateful, warm adieu. I, with a much indebted tear, shall still remember you. But we mustn't forget the rest of Scotland. Her largest city is Glasgow. Indeed, it is the second largest in the British Isles and a great centre of industry and commerce. Art is taken care of in many ways, notably in the municipal art collection at this gallery. And for learning, there is the university which was founded in 1450. Seen across the spaciousness of Kelvin Grove Park, the university looks particularly fine, but places where work is done always do look better from a distance. The cathedral is one of the earliest buildings in Glasgow, but the city's name is taken from Glasgow Green. Loosely translated from the Gaelic, Glasgow means beloved green place. On the other hand, the stock exchange not far away is never green and seldom beloved. It has been said that the River Clyde brought the prosperity of Glasgow upon its bosom, and certainly no river can lay claim to greater activity, nor has any stretch of water known the coming and going of finer ships. But while we think chiefly of the mighty grandeur of the Queen Mary's and Queen Elizabeth, we won't forget the comparatively humble pleasure steamer. It's a great industrial area, but there's a little time for play too. The captains of these vessels have served their time upon the high seas, but they don't disdain to return to the river and the lochs they know so well. And it's a trip that's worth anybody's time, because on the Clyde you're likely to see any kind of ship that floats, and any kind of machinery that floats them or loads their cargoes. Here we are at Greenock, with the shipbuilding Clyde behind us, and the gateway to the open sea lying ahead, the Firth of Clyde, a rippling ribbon winding through the ancient Scottish hills, untouched by the grimy hand of man which so often turns beauty into ugliness and calls it progress. The Kyles of Bute are counted among the beauties of the world, the word Kyles, by the way, meaning narrows. And then there is the country round Loch Lomond. Don't fall in, will you? That's right. And those really are the bonny, bonny banks. It has been said that whoever holds Stirling holds the Highlands, but that was really referring to the days when the small-scale wars and border raids were going on between England and Scotland. Today it's fairly peaceful here, if nowhere else. in the great fortress of Stirling Castle, Mary Queen of Scots was crowned. There is a statue of Robert Bruce, reminding us of the historic events that have taken place in Stirling. Edward I besieged it. James III was born here. Much of Scotland's story was written within these walls. From here you can see some of those famous battlefields of history, with their memories of Wallace and Bannockburn. But perhaps we won't go into that. In the background you can see the memorial to William Wallace, the Scot who fought so hard for Scotland's liberty and died upon the scaffold. This old bridge is called the Gateway to the Highlands. He who held this bridge was no relation to Horatius, but he did keep the savage Highlanders at bay, always an exceedingly difficult thing to do. But this is no savage Highlander, or if it is, keeping the bridge will be a pleasure. What this is doing in the middle of all our history, I can't think. But of course, if there weren't any women, there wouldn't be any history. So we'll pass on to Linlithgow Palace, where James V and Mary Queen of Scots were born. In connection with Linlithgow, there are all sorts of strange legends about witches and burnings and the curse of evil. But we don't want to get morbid, so we'll just look at the place and leave it at that. Obviously not afraid of the witch. They say that good, clean water means fine, deep pasture, and this magnificent specimen of Scotland's sheep, just having a final trim, goes to prove it. He's in no hurry. From the wool of the lovely sheep, it is no great stretch of imagination that takes you over to the manufacture of Scottish tweed, which is more famous still, if possible. History has recorded that Queen Elizabeth accepted a length of tweed from her future victim, Mary Queen of Scots, and today anybody would be glad to do the same. Good Scottish wool which may be seen all over the world. Yes, this river of Scotland is one of the sources of her industry and prosperity, but that naturally is not suggesting that any of it gets into the milk. And very nice too. But we can't hang around all day talking to you girls. We must go over to the Celtic Church, which is one of the most ancient buildings in Scotland. And we must take a look at St Andrew's University, which was founded in 1411. Although there were religious schools about 300 years before that, this was the earliest centre of organised learning. But you may prefer golf. or even if you don't, you must surely bare your head at St. Andrews. For this is the very shrine, the very fountainhead of all golf. This is where the rules of the royal and ancient game are fixed. Other countries are said to be taking it up quite a lot, but it's not quite the same as in Scotland, you know. This is Willie Auchterlony, St. Andrews Professionals. He makes it look rather easier than it really is. The Forth Bridge is one of the sights of Scotland, a little more than 1.5 miles in length. More than 50 years old, it has been in constant use since it was built. And from famous bridges to famous trains, at 10 o'clock every morning the Flying Scotsman pulls out of Edinburgh. But if you're staying, you'll be walking along Princes Street, one of the finest streets in the world. This is Tolbooth at Edinburgh, once the scene of public execution. Here is St. Giles Cathedral. And this is the home of John Knox, first a priest and then a reformer. But the home of the polar bears is Edinburgh Zoo, and that gives more delight to the children at any rate than all the wonders of Edinburgh's beauty or the solemn grandeur of her history. The Palace of Holyrood House is the home of the King when he is residing in the Scottish capital. It takes its name from the Holy Cross or Rood, brought to Scotland by St. Margaret about the year 1070. The centre of Edinburgh is the castle, a stern reminder of the royal power of ancient days when a king's residence had also to be a fortress. One of the most imposing features here is Mons Meg. This ancient cannon was said to have struck terror less into the heart of those it was fired at than the gunners who had to fire it. And another object of interest here is the dog cemetery. First the burial place of one of the favourite dogs of a queen, now devoted to the memory of pets of British soldiers. Edinburgh looks at its best when seen from the castle. And it is from this place that the 1 o'clock gun is fired, regular as clockwork. And Scotsmen set their watches by this gun, which effectually disposes of any kind of joke about watches and Scotsmen. But lest you think that Scotland is all history and dwells only in the past, let us finish our tour at Prestwick Airport. It was to Prestwick that a great volume of transatlantic air traffic came during the Second World War. It is from Prestwick that Scottish businessmen go out in peacetime. And Scottish businessmen are not dreaming of the historical past. Scottish businessmen seldom dream at all.